Greetings, Horsepower Nation. It is I, Eric, your humble servant. Yet today I'm going to bring another installment of some more drag racing tech, if you will. Something I experienced. Eventually, everybody at some point with building a race car, drag car, as we're talking in this format of drag racing, you might get to the point where one day you want to swap out the transmission. I did. And I luckily had a fabricator help me with mine. So what I'm going to do is, if you're at that point or you're debating, hey, I want to swap out the transmission, but how involved is it? What must I do to make sure I do it right? Well, I'm just going to tell you what I did, and we'll go from there. It's going to be a two-part, because what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover the how to fabricate a mount using the stock cross member that's on your car. And then there's going to be a part two where we're going to determine the proper drive shaft length, because obviously when you change a transmission, the tail shaft lengths can vary. So obviously your drive shaft is either going to have to be longer or shorter to compensate for that. So that way, obviously, the drive shaft couples the transmission output shaft to the pinion gear in your rear drive. So here we go. This is going to be probably a little quick, but I'll try to explain as thorough as I can. Okay, so what I did was, I have a 94 Camaro LT1 powered. Those have 4 L60E electronic transmissions in it. So what I did was, I went to a turbo 350 reverse pattern automatic transmission in the car. So we had to move the mount 1.5 inches forward from where the stock location was for 4L60E. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of show here, maybe they're not the best visuals, but I'm going to try and get the point across of how I went about to fabricate this. So what we're going to use is, we're going to use this 3/8 extension as a cross member, okay? Where you just use a visual, and just imagine this is the cross member in your car, okay? So what you want to do first is, obviously, you're going to take the old transmission out, okay? And then you're going to have the transmission that you're putting in. You don't have to have the torque converter in, okay? But what you do need to do is put the transmission that you're going to put in the car, put it up into place, whether you use a floor jack, transmission jack, whatever. Put that in, and put the 6 bolts for the bell housing. So in other words, you want that transmission bolted tight against the back of the engine, okay? Because then you know everything is going to be straight, because the whole key is you want your drivetrain straight as possible. So once you have the 6 to 8 bell housing bolts tight, and that the transmission's kind of just hanging there, you don't want the whole weight of the transmission on those bolts, but it's you can tell it's bolted tight to the engine. Okay, remember, there's also 2 dowels, one on each side, that come out of the engine, so you can line everything up so you get it on the right holes of the transmission on the engine, so that way everything lines up perfect, okay? So once you have it together, you're going to have to fabricate a new mount for your cross member. So first thing, what I did was, I took a piece of 1/4-inch steel, okay, and then I measured. So then what I did was I cut a piece of, now this is probably not the best, this is going to represent 1/4-inch steel, okay? And what you have here is an end mill hole. In other words, you're going to have, so you have back and forth adjustment of where where your mount's going to come down, where you bolt to. So it's going to be an oblong hole you're going to drill at one end. The other end here, you're going to weld that in line with, again, keeping it straight. You're going to weld that onto your cross member, and it's going to look something like that, okay? Now, the only problem I have with that is, as you can see, even with the paper, which we'll illustrate, even if you're going to use 1/4-inch steel, you're going to have eventually it's going to warp or bend, whatever, from just use. If you're drag racing, and obviously you're going to be launching the car, and it won't take long till that becomes a problem. So what I did was, I triangulated. So I'm going to demonstrate what that is. So basically what I did was, you measure the difference, and then what you're going to do is, you're going to actually make a triangle. Something like that. You can even make something out of cardboard as a template, and then cut it out of your steel stock, okay? So then you're going to weld that onto, looks like arts and crafts today, doesn't it? Kind of messed up. Anyway, so what you're going to do is you're going to put one on each side. You're going to put, you're going to try and get this, bear with me here. I'm terrible at trying to do two things at once here. So you're going to have this thing basically looking, I don't know how well you can see that, but you see how that is there. And so basically you're going to weld here on the cross member and here on that plate where your mount's going to be. And then if you want to, you can also go on the inside and run a bead of weld on the inside of that as well. Then what you can do is you can do the same thing on the other side as well. So that way you have a triangle on both sides. And as, I don't know how well you can see that, and if this paper isn't really the greatest, I should have used cardboard. But as you can see, it looks like a U channel. So that's going to help keep that that mount where you have it end milled. It's going to help keep that from warping, distorting over time. So a triangle, if you know anything about geometry, it's probably one of the strongest things. It adds strength to corners and things like that. So if you put the triangle and weld it outside, the back, and on the inside, that'll keep that mount pretty well sturdy, that it shouldn't move, and it should last for a long time. So again, do your measurements. If you don't have a welder or you don't think you can do it, find maybe a good somebody who has a welding shop, maybe your mechanic that you use, or the garage you get your car serviced, or maybe they know somebody who welds, who can help you out with measuring and fabricating. But basically it's a 3-piece mount. Like I said, I use 1/4-inch steel, and like I say, if you want, you can use poster board would be good if you want to make a template first. So that way all you have to do is trace that out onto your steel, and then you just cut it out either with a cutoff wheel on a grinder or a whizzer wheel on an air grinder, or however you want to do it. Or if you want to have somebody else do it, if you don't feel comfortable, that's fine too. But basically the whole thing is using those triangles to give it strength. So I hope this helps. My next video, I'm going to cover the determining drive shaft length and help you out with that. And hopefully that can help you with your transmission swap. So everybody take care. Have a great day and watch out for each other. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye now.